video, we're going to allocate service department costs using the step method. We're told the carload manufacturing has two production departments, the machining and assembly, as well as two service departments, maintenance and cafeteria. The direct costs for each department are given below, as well as the proportion of service cost used by the various departments. Let's go ahead and solve the cost allocation using the step method, allocating the cost of the maintenance department first. The first thing we're going to do is pick up our direct cost, which are given: maintenance $48,400, cafeteria $36,000, machining and assembly we don't care about since we're only allocating indirect costs in this problem. The allocation proportions: cafeteria 20% goes to, or rather the maintenance cost 20% goes to the cafeteria, the machining gets 0.6, assembly 0.2, for a total of 1. Since we're allocating the cost of maintenance first, we will use allocations to all three of those departments. So the cafeteria department will get 20% of the total cost of the maintenance department. Machining will get 60%, and assembly will get 20%. Once we go to the next cost allocation, the cafeteria department, 20% of the allocation, or 0.2, typically goes to machining, and 20% typically goes to assembly. And the remaining 60%, recall, went to maintenance. But we have now closed off the maintenance department since we've allocated all the costs from it and will not allocate additional costs into it. That means that the machining department will get 50% of the cafeteria cost, and assembly will get the remaining 50% of the cost. Let's go ahead now and allocate cost from maintenance. We had $48,400 in cost in the maintenance department. That full cost needs to be allocated out, and it's being allocated out in accordance with these proportions. That means that we will allocate $9,680, which is the $48,400 times 20%, to the cafeteria. We will allocate $29,040, which is the $48,400 times 60%, to machining, and the remaining 20%, or $9,680, will be allocated to the assembly department. Again, we sum our rows to ensure all of our costs are allocated out, and we sum our column to ensure that we've allocated all the cost out of maintenance. The cafeteria now has $45,680 in cost, which we allocate out, and we're allocating that out to our remaining end-user departments. Half will go to machining, and half will go to assembly. So machining will get assigned $22,840, as will assembly. And again, we sum our entire row to ensure that it adds to 0, and we sum our entire column to ensure that it adds to 0 as well. So the total cost allocated to machining is $51,880 of indirect cost. The indirect cost assigned to assembly is $32,520. And again, we make sure our total cost ties in with the total indirect costs we had above. We'll now walk through the cost allocations again using the step method, allocating from the cafeteria first. Again, our first step is to pick up our direct cost for the maintenance department and the cafeteria department. Again, we've got no direct cost for the machining department or assembly that we're going to pick up in our calculations because the problem only asks for the allocation of indirect cost. Next, we're going to look at the allocation proportions. Machining gets 60%, or 0.6 rather. Assembly gets 0.2 for a total of 0.8. Again, for the maintenance department, we will already have allocated out from the cafeteria, so we will only consider the cost coming from the maintenance department to the end user departments. So the percentage allocations for the maintenance department will be 75% goes to machining and 25% goes to assembly. For costs being allocated out of the cafeteria, the proportions are given at 0.6, 0.2, and 0.2 for a total of 1. So 60% of the cost coming out of the cafeteria will be allocated to maintenance, 20% will be allocated to machining, and 20% to assembly. Let's go ahead and start allocating costs. Again, the step method, cafeteria first, means $36,000 in cost will come out of the cafeteria. and the cost in the cafeteria is being allocated in the proportions 60%, 20%, 20%. So we will have 36,000 times 60%, or 21,600 going into maintenance. We will have 7,200 going into machining. We will have 7,200 going into assembly. Again, we want to make sure that our row sums to 0, as well as our column sums to 0 to ensure we've allocated out all the costs. We've now allocated all the costs out of cafeteria and will not allocate additional cost into it. So our next step is to allocate cost from the maintenance department. We've got a total of $70,000 in cost in the maintenance department. We will allocate that out to machining, and machining will get 75% of the $70,000, or $52,500. And assembly will get $17,500, which is 20%. We then sum our columns, and we get total cost allocations for machining of $59,700, $24,700 for assembly, and again, the total cost that we've allocated out should equal the total indirect cost we started with in terms of allocations.